Welcome to Blue Planet News. Today, we are looking at invisible impacts and their role in damaging the marine environment. Invisible impacts are factors that affect components of an ecological system that cannot be seen by the human eye, with unpredictable long-term consequences. It has been found that 80% of invisible chemical pollution in the marine environment comes from industrial waste discharge, the majority of which has not been treated beforehand. This is of great concern. Here we have some expert scientists to give us insight into this issue and their research. They will be discussing the following topics in some more detail: the impact of estrogenic chemicals on fish populations, marine wildlife, species DNA, and external environmental stresses, as well as governmental responses to these issues. What's your take on this, Nicola?
One of the studies I conducted in 2016 in northeastern US looked at the biological makeup of fish when exposed to endocrine-disrupting chemical, or EDC pollution, specifically estrogenic chemicals. And the research team looked at smallmouth and largemouth bass, since they tend to show the first signs of impact before other species. Shockingly, we found that 85% and 27% respectively showed signs of intersex, and in particular we found egg cells in the testes of male species, which disrupted their normal hormonal functioning. And since the bass show the first impacts, we can extrapolate that this would have wider effects on the marine food chain.
In our 2007 study in Canada, where we added high concentrations of synthetic estrogen to a pond, we actually found that the fish population there crashed as a result. Intersex, as you mentioned, which shows no clear outward physical signs, was a precursor to these more detrimental outcomes. The fish had weaker immune systems because of their hormone disruption, which caused them to struggle to adapt and respond resiliently when faced with environmental changes. This would certainly send shockwaves up the food chain in the real marine environment.
Our studies actually showed that gene expression and DNA methylation occurred in EDC-affected fish. This increased deformities and decreased egg production in females. When we completed an intergenerational analysis, the second generation, indirectly exposed to EDCs through their parents, had reduced hatching success and deformities in their larvae. The third generation didn't have any exposure. It had the largest decrease in survival rates and outer DNA methylation. This doesn't look promising, as you've both mentioned.
So endocrine systems are also essential in helping wildlife to respond to environmental stresses, and in particular the thyroid, sex steroid and glucocorticosteroidal systems are related to their ability to adapt to change, and so species are likely to suffer more greatly when exposed to increasing changes in the ocean environment because of anthropogenic climate change, and this can create a vicious cycle as their offspring become more sensitive to the effect of those chemicals in subsequent exposures, and so they're even more maladapted to climate changes.
Agreed, and what has baffled us most is that the effects have been detected even in protected areas, where the environment should be close to pristine. Now we know that everything we use or put on the land ends up in the water at some point.
Thank you all for that insight. Are there any institutional barriers you've encountered which make these difficult to resolve?
So in light of mounting evidence relating to the negative impact of sewage runoff, in 2012, the government stated that they would set aside £30 billion to update our sewage treatment plants and bring water quality back up. However, earlier this year, the Thames Water Company was fined only £4 million for a 30-hour sewage release, reportedly responsible for approximately 3,000 fish deaths. And additionally, the Environmental Agency spent 11 years investigating and prosecuting Southern Water for illegally dumping billions of litres of untreated sewage into England's rivers and seas. And in 2020, they identified over 400,000 sewage spills. So Fish Legal calls for transparency from the EA, as they refused to disclose important information whilst an investigation was launched.
The government also maps areas which are safe for people to swim in and for our ecosystems to thrive. However, the areas marked as designated safe for bathing are directly next to areas that have been marked unsafe. Researchers suggest that the UK's safe waters are also contaminated. A potential reason for this is that the coastal towns and cities are reliant on visitors for a large portion of their income. Therefore, signposting these zones as unsafe is detrimental to the local economy.
The needed bills are hard to get through, as Number 10 and the Treasury are of the opinion that updating water companies' infrastructure is just too expensive.
Thank you for this explanation, and now we will hear about existing and potential technological solutions for this issue.
Biodegradation is expected to replace traditional water treatment methods and considered to be a highly promising removal technology for EDCs. Microorganisms which have been found to effectively degrade the main EDCs are bacteria, fungi, algae, and enzymes. The challenge with biodegradation is to find a microbe that can degrade EDCs in a wide range of environments rather than just one type. Photocatalytic technology also has a high degradation rate and mineralization ability, but we urgently need to understand the intermediates and degradation mechanisms produced by this method. The last of the removal technologies that I'd like to mention is granular activated carbon, which has been known to remove more important EDCs as well as other chemicals in extremely low concentrations. However, this method is expensive and in many ways is inefficient. Another solution could be sustainable farming, finding substitute chemicals to pesticides that could retain the benefits of current products while avoiding any potential for hormone-disrupting side effects. For example, by spraying crops with natural pesticides based on orange oil or releasing natural predators that prey on the pests. Even though these existing solutions have potential, more progress is needed to be made to find solutions with greater removal efficiency.
Thank you all for your insights today. Hopefully these discussions will help us achieve the necessary progress to ensure the safety of our marine ecosystems.